So today we're diving into a story that is, frankly, deeply disturbing. It starts with something as simple as a phone call, but it spirals into this whole world of international crime, human trafficking, and what can only be called modern-day slavery. We're going to go inside the digital scam compounds of Southeast Asia to really unpack what's going on.
Think about it for a second. Have you ever gotten one of those calls, the ones that make your heart just stop? A voice on the other end says to the police that you've committed some crime, there's a warrant out for your arrest, and the only way out is to pay them. Right now. You can feel the panic setting in, right? It feels so real.
Well, this whole tactic, it has a name. It's called digital arrest. It's a really sophisticated and, let's be honest, a brazenly cruel way to extort people. But what if I told you the person on the other end of that line, the one making the threats, is also a victim, and that they're trapped in a nightmare that's way worse than you could even imagine? To really understand what's happening, we have to look past the scam itself. We have to start asking who is actually making these calls, and where are they calling from? The answer takes us deep inside this massive network of what you can really only call digital sweatshops. And this, right here, is where the story takes a truly horrifying turn. This reframes the entire problem. The person on the phone isn't just some low-level criminal trying to make a buck. No, they are very likely a captive, forced to scam you, forced to defraud people under the constant threat of torture and violence. So you're probably wondering, how on earth does somebody end up in this situation? Well, it's a chillingly methodical process. It all starts with a job ad online, something that looks totally legit. It might promise a high-paying tech job in a place like Thailand, and it's often targeting skilled professionals from countries like India. People arrive, sometimes using visa-free travel, and that's when the trap springs. Their passports are taken, and they're illegally trafficked across the border into these lawless parts of Myanmar, and that's where they're enslaved in these scam compounds.
And the conditions inside these places, the sheer brutality is just hard to wrap your head around. This isn't just a bad job. This is slavery, full stop. Captives are subjected to extreme violence. If they don't hit their scamming targets, they're tortured. They're forced to work insane hours, running these scams on people all over the world.
But that raises a huge question, right? How can criminal operations on this kind of industrial scale even exist? To get that, we need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture, the whole geopolitical landscape of the region. Specifically, what's going on in Myanmar.
The whole crisis really exploded after the 2021 military coup in Myanmar. That coup kicked off a massive civil war, and in the border regions, any kind of state control basically just collapsed. This power vacuum created the absolute perfect breeding ground for organized crime. Ethnic militias, some of them allied with the military junta, took control of these territories, and they were looking for new ways to make money to fund their operations. And the grim reality on the ground is that the central government has pretty much zero authority in these areas. But it's actually worse than that. The armed groups running these places aren't just looking the other way, they're actively in on it. They are taxing these scam compounds, using the money to fund their military activities.
Okay, so for any criminal enterprise, there's always one critical question you have to answer. What do you do with the money? We're talking about billions of dollars being stolen. So how does it all just disappear? Well, while the captives, the people forced to make the calls, are from all over, global monitors are pretty clear that Chinese organized crime syndicates are the real kingpins here. They're the ones orchestrating these huge transnational networks. And of course, they've built a super sophisticated system to launder all the profits.
The process is slick. First, the money stolen from victims gets sent to local bank accounts that are controlled by so-called mules. From there, it gets funneled through these really shady financial institutions, like a place called Huione Pay in Cambodia. And then comes the final, most important step. They convert all that cash into cryptocurrency.
And that's the whole point. That's the end game. Once that money becomes crypto, it basically vanishes into this decentralized, anonymous financial system. For law enforcement, trying to trace it, let alone recover it, becomes nearly impossible.
So you can see how huge this problem is. It touches everything: crime, technology, geopolitical conflict. It leaves you wondering, what could possibly be done about it? It turns out the solution can't just be about having better cybersecurity.
For a country like India, this is a particularly painful two-sided crisis. On one hand, you have thousands of Indian citizens being trafficked and forced into this slave labor. And on the other hand, you have thousands more people back home who are being defrauded by them. They are literally victims on both sides of the screen. And this brings us to what might be the most fundamental question we have to ask ourselves when we start thinking about solutions. Are we even looking at this problem in the right way? Is this just cybercrime?
And the answer has to be a definitive no. If you treat this purely as a cybercrime issue, if you only focus on blocking calls or freezing bank accounts, you are absolutely doomed to fail. This is a transnational crisis, and it demands a powerful, coordinated, diplomatic response.
A real solution has to be multi-pronged. I mean, yes, of course it involves public awareness and stronger cyber policing at home, but crucially, it requires international action. It means putting real diplomatic pressure on Myanmar and Cambodia. It means coordinating a regional response with partners like China, Thailand, and Vietnam, because they're all being affected by this too.
But maybe the single most important shift that has to happen is one of perspective. The United Nations needs to be mobilized, and it has to recognize this crisis for what it truly is. This isn't just financial fraud. This is a modern manifestation of slavery, and it demands the world's urgent attention as a grave human rights catastrophe.
And that really just leaves us with one final, chilling thought. The digital screen, our phone, our laptop, it separates us from so much. But we have to ask ourselves, when a crime is committed through a piece of technology, does that somehow make the immense human suffering behind it invisible? Does it make it any less real or any less urgent?